All right, so let's bring our panel into the ring. Former Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, T.W. Shannon, and Jonathan Harris. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Great to have you here. Thanks for getting to the ring with us. All right, T.W., I'm going to start with you. Is Bernie Sanders right? Is this Biden's Vietnam moment?
Well, if it is, he's failed it, right? I mean, the challenge that Joe Biden has is he's running in an election where people have a clear contrast between himself and Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was president, we didn't have these problems. We didn't have three wars. We didn't have a war in Israel, a war in Europe, and one at our southern border. This all happened under Joe Biden's watch. And so, yes, this is a Vietnam moment, but like every other moment in his presidency, Joe Biden has failed to meet the moment because he can't speak decisively about the issues. He equivocates too often, and his ability to lead is in question by 70% of Americans. He's failed, just like Vietnam was a failure.
Okay, Jonathan, I can see you completely agree with TW here, but I will say that President Biden is trying to thread the needle with his progressive flank and the youth vote here and just normal Democrats. So can he do it?
Well, so that's the thing. It's always nice to take kind of a trip to the parallel kind of Jim Jones, David Koresh world of a Trump supporter and then come back to reality. The reality is the situation between Israel and Palestine and Gaza has been going on for decades. And it's just ridiculous. The truth of the matter is, on one side of the aisle, you have Trump and Trump supporters, and Trump told them to their faces he could shoot someone and get away with it, and they cheered like he wasn't insulting them to their faces and saying they'll support anything he does. On the other side, you have President Biden, head of the Democratic Party, which is the big tent party. And so he has got to walk a very fine line. He's got to make sure that he's hearing people who believe in a religious support for Israel, or supporting them for foreign policy reasons, or the younger people, which are a core part of his base, who are very much against what they view as Israel engaging in a genocide, having killed what I think 30,000 people. We're at 30,000 civilians since October.
Jonathan,
that is almost impossible to do. And so walking that line is very difficult. And on the other side, Trump doesn't have to do anything. He could do anything and his supporters would cheer it on.
Well, you could.
Well, with all due respect, I think it's hard to call the Democrat Party the Big Tent Party. I don't think that the Jewish students who are being accosted daily feel like it's a Big Tent Party. And the truth is, Joe Biden has equivocated on the issue, and he caused the problem because of his failed policies. We didn't have these problems when Donald Trump was president.
Okay, let me jump in here for a second, because according to a Merit Street public pollster, Scott Rasmussen, he found that 71% of voters actually support arresting pro-Palestinian protesters. 65% of respondents said that they're in favor of sending in the National Guard. So to this point here, gentlemen, the majority of the nation is actually frustrated with what is happening on college campuses. And so, TW, how is that going to play here in November?
Well, the only people who aren't frustrated are those radicals in the Democrat Party who have allowed the Hamas caucus, the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party, to control the narrative. Americans see through it. Joe Biden has equivocated on his support for Israel, even when he gave the milquetoast speech this week, where he could have very clearly condemn the violence that's happening against Jewish Americans. He didn't. He chose to speak more to the fact about Islamophobia, which is not an issue in this country right now. That's not what we're facing. Joe Biden is a big part of the problem. And people know when Donald Trump was the president, people were more free. They were more prosperous. That's a fact, and you can't change it just because of the election season. Americans remember.
Okay, final seconds here. Jonathan, final words.
None of that is true. President Biden's remarks—
It's absolutely true, Jonathan, and you know it.
Can I please finish? I didn't interrupt you. Jewish students being safe on campus. Donald Trump has the worst jobs record of any president in the history of this country, and you can't blame him bungling COVID, even though that's the
best economy in the history of America.
He crashed the economy into a recession.
There was a small thing called a pandemic, Jonathan. You can't forget that. Remember the pandemic?
Right.
I just told you he crashed it before. You're just not telling the truth, and that's typical of a Trump supporter.
You are being intellectually disingenuous, and you know it.
I will add in here, gentlemen, I will add in here, one of the interesting thing is most polling right now does show President Biden is in favor of most Americans when it does come to the economy. They have overlooked COVID. So at the end of the day, we just got job numbers today. The job numbers are cooling, which is great for the economy, but not great for President Biden at the end of the day, TW.
Listen, Americans are hurting. They are paying more for gasoline. They're paying more for food. Inflation is through the roof. And yes, it is slowed, but we're still way ahead than we've been in a very long time. And it's because of the failed policies of Joe Biden. And we can't change that just because it's an election year. The facts are a very tough thing, Jonathan, and you can't change them just because of an election.
You have no relationship
with
the
facts.
Doesn't work.
You have zero relationship with the facts. The truth of the matter is when Trump was president, we couldn't go to concerts. There was no toilet paper. The country had no leadership. When Biden took over, he recovered every job that Trump lost, plus millions more.
That's a revisionist history. Nice try.
With that. Why don't you go look up what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says about jobs? Then you can come back and apologize. I just told you what the facts are. I'm sorry you're not acquainted.
Middle America.
All right.
Hurting.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to have to jump in. We're going to have to leave it there.